Okay, as we look at problem number 9 on our Chapter 8 review, it says find the income tax owed to the federal government for somebody that has a gross income of $62,000. They have a tax deferred retirement savings of $2,300.
Hey everybody,
The
we're thinking
married
about
couple,
going on each
2
deal
kids,
at 11:30
filing jointly.
morning. The more the merrier.
And then it says interest paid on the mortgage of $3,000 and $2,000 of tax credit. So the very first thing that we need to do on this problem right here is you first need to find the adjusted gross income by subtracting the tax deferred retirement savings from your gross income. So notice here's your gross income. Now when we put money into a tax deferred retirement savings, we don't have to pay taxes on that until we start to use that for our retirement. And so that's going to be your very first step right here, because you're just going to go ahead and subtract those. And so that's what's called the adjusted gross income. When you take that $62,000 minus $2,300, you're going to get your adjusted gross income of $59,700. Now that's going to be your income that we're going to go ahead and take that income right there, and we got to go look at our chart and find out, okay, what is our exemptions and what is the standard deduction. So if we look at our chart, so you can notice that the second thing that we have to do, it says go to the column of married filing jointly to find the exemptions per person and the standard deductions and subtract from the adjusted gross income to get your taxable income. So if we look at our tax chart right here, so if you're looking at your tax chart on your formula sheet, you're going to notice that we got to go ahead and find the column that fits the married filing jointly. And so you'll notice with married filing jointly, we're looking at this column right here. So this column right here, we look at our exemptions, and the exemptions is $3,800 per person. And so depending upon how many people that you're claiming as your exemptions, you take 3,800 times that. And then notice also here, you get a standard deduction of $11,900. So remember, you only get one type of deduction. You can either do the standard deduction or you can do the itemized deduction. And so as we look at our problem right here, we're going to notice that first off, this is married filing jointly, and they have 2 kids. And so since that is the case, that is going to be our exemption. We're going to have to take that $3,800 and times by 4 people. So remember, the exemption is $3,800 per person, which is times that by 4 people. And so when you take your calculator, and we'll just show you the math on this. So remember, we took the $62,000 and we subtracted the $3,000, or sorry, the $2,300. So we took $62,000 minus the $2,300 that we put into our tax deferred savings account. That's what gave us this $59,700. And now we're going to take our exemptions, and that's $3,800 per person. So we're going to take 3,800 times 4, and when we do that, we get $15,200. So we're going to go ahead and subtract that $15,200 to get our taxable income. And now we're going to go ahead and notice that here's our 2 types of deductions we can do. We can either do the standard deduction, so if you remember back to your chart, that was $11,900, or we can do an itemized deduction. So an itemized deduction includes all the mortgage, interest paid, and all of that. And you're going to notice that in this particular case right here, all they had for an itemized deduction was $3,000. So we go ahead and compare the 2 to see which one's greater. And you're going to notice that, of course, $11,900 is greater. And so we're going to subtract that. So we can't have both deductions. We only get one or the other. So we always just take whichever one's the greatest. So now we're just going to go ahead and take our calculator. We're going to go ahead and subtract those 3 numbers right there. And that's going to be our taxable income. So when we do this problem right here, you're going to notice that we started off with $62,000. We subtracted the $2,300 to get $59,700. That's your adjusted gross income. Now we're going to go ahead and subtract our exemptions, which is $15,200, and now we're also going to subtract $11,900. So So when we do that right there, we take 59,700 and we're going to subtract the $15,200 for our exemptions. And then we're going to subtract that standard deduction because I was greater than the itemized deduction of 11,900. And when we do that, we get this answer right here. It comes out to be $32,600. So that's going to be our taxable income. So remember, to pay taxes on that taxable income, we got to go back to our tax table and we got to go ahead and find in that column how it all breaks down into the different categories. So notice right now we are at 32,600. Now we're going to break it down according to our tax table. So I go back to my formula sheet and I notice that on this formula sheet, here I am in this column right here. This column is broken down just a little bit differently because we are now in the married filing jointly column. And so now we're going to go up to 17,400 is going to be at the 10% rate. And then 17,401 to 70,700 is going to be at the 15% rate. So we're going to take our 32,600 and we're going to break it down. First, we're going to take out 17,400 and pay 10% on it. And then we're going to go ahead and take whatever's remaining after that and pay the 15% tax rate on it. So if you go back to your problem right here, here's our taxable income of $32,600. So we're going to take that 17,400 and we're going to times that by 0.10, and that's going to give us our tax rate for the 17,400. So if you take a calc, take 17,400, times that by 0.10, the 10% tax rate. There's the taxes for that 17,400. Now, the remainder of it is going to fall in the next tax bracket of 15%. So now I'm going to take my 32,600 and I'm going to subtract my 17,400 that I already paid taxes on, and I'm going to get a total of $15,200. So notice when I subtract these, I get $15,200, and that's going to be taxed at the 15% rate. So I'm going to take my $15,200 and times that by 15%, which is 0.15, and that's going to give me a total of $2,280. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and add these two together, and that's going to be the taxes that I owe. So I'm going to take $1,740. I'm going to add $2,280 to it, and then I'm going to get this answer of $4,020. Well, if you'll notice on the problem, it says that they had $2,000 worth of tax credits. And the interesting thing about tax credits is the tax credits are actually subtracted from your actual tax bill. So if you can get tax credits, that's a very excellent way to lower your tax bill. And so this tax credits, you can notice right here, your tax credits of $2,000. So here's my tax credits, and I get to subtract those directly from my tax bill. So when I do this problem right here, I can go ahead and take my $4,020, which is what I owe in taxes, and now since I have a tax credit, I get to subtract out $2,000. And that's going to give me my total tax bill of $2,020. Okay, on this next problem right here, now we're looking at our Social Security tax. So the Social Security tax basically is a flat tax. In other words, you just pay so much for whatever you owe. And so you just multiply that percentage just straight up. So you're just going to look at table 8.2, 2012 FICA tax rate on the formula sheet and use the rate found in the first column for the employee's rate. Since this person is not self-employed, the rate is 5.65% on first 110,000 of income. So multiply 45,000 times 5.65% to get your answer. So if you look at your, oops, hit the wrong button here. If you look at your formula sheet right here, you notice that on your formula sheet, if you scroll on down right here, and I actually labeled this so you can see this is the FICA tax table for problem number 10. So this person is not self-employed. So in other words, they're going to fall in this category right here. in the very first column. And you'll notice it says 5.65% on the first $110,000 of their income. And so basically we're just going to have to go ahead and multiply whatever they make up to 110,000 by 5.65%. So if you go back here and take a look at this individual made $45,000. 5.65, remember that's 5.65 divided by 100, so that's 0.565. Just going to go ahead and multiply that out, and we're just going to take our calculator and go ahead and multiply that out. And so on my calculator right here, I'm just going to go ahead and take 45,000. I'm going to times that by 0.0565, and that's going to give me my tax bill of $2,542.50. On number 11, it says right here on number 11, it says, use the simple interest to find the ending balance. So we've got $21,000, and we're going to go ahead and put it into an account for 2 years that pays 3%. So basically, you're going to use the formula for calculating future value for simple interest found on the formula sheet. So if you go to your formula sheet, you're going to notice that on your formula sheet, it has those interest formulas that we're going to be working with. And so as you look at this right here, here's the future value formula that we have. So here's our formula that we're going to be working with. It says the future value A of P dollars at simple interest rate, R is a decimal for T years, is given by A equals P times 1 plus R times T. When we go back to our problem, we're going to use that formula. And so you're going to notice I wrote down the formula right here. It is found on your formula sheet. So A equals P times 1 plus R to T. So remember, P stands for your principal. That's the amount invested. R is your rate. Make sure you change to a decimal. And T is the time we're going to leave it for. Amount that we are investing is $21,000. So here's our 1 right here. And the interest rate is 3%. Change that to decimal by taking 3 divided by 100, which is 0.03. And then we'll times that by 2. Just take our calculator and just type that in exactly as you see it. So we're going to type in 21,000. And then in parentheses, we're going to put 1 plus, and then we put 0.03. And we're going to times that by 2. And in parentheses there. And your total amount that your future value that you're going to have in that account is going to be, after 2 years, $22,260. On number 12, it says, find the total value of an investment after the time given using the compound interest formula. So you're going to notice we're going to invest $1,720 at 16% compounded semi-annually for 5 years. And so we're going to go ahead and go to our formula sheet, and you're going to notice on your formula sheet, they have that formula written out for you on your formula sheet for interest compounded n times. And so that's going to be this formula right here that says we have A all equals P times 1 plus R over N all to the N times T. And using that formula in this problem right here, you're going to notice that this problem right here again, P is your principal, R is your rate, T is the time, but now we've got to remember our compounding numbers. So depending upon what the problem asks for, that's what our compounding numbers are going to be using. So just remember, these are your compounding numbers. So if it says annually, n is equal to 1, semi-annually, n equals 2, quarterly, n equals 4, monthly, n equals 12, weekly, n equals 52, daily, n equals 365. So this problem right here, you're going to notice that it is semi-annual. So that means that we're going to use an n equals 2. So here's our semi-annual number right here, n equals 2. That's what we're going to be using. So we go ahead and substitute in our 1720, place at P. We still have our 1, our rate, which is 16%. You take 16 divided by 100, you get 0.16. So that's going to be 0.16. The compounding number is 2, so we insert that there. And so here's our compounding number again of 2, and we're going to put it in for 5 years. Now once we do that, we're just going to put it into our calculator and find the answer. So you'll notice to type this into your calc exactly, you see it, so you type in 1,720, you put parentheses there, and we've got 1 plus, then we're going to create a fraction by hitting alpha, F1, get your fraction there, put 0.16 in your numerator, and in your denominator we're going to have a 2, you arrow off to the side, and then you hit your power key, and then type in 2 times 5. Once you're done, just hit enter, and there's what it comes out to be, $3,713.35 is how much you would have after 5 years, given those conditions of that formula. So looking at our next problem, on number 13, it says, the price of a home is $120,000. The bank requires a 10% down payment and 2 points at the time of closing. The cost of the home is financed with a 30-year fixed rate mortgage at 8.5%. So here's all the information. So we've got a $120,000 home. We're going to have to make a 10% down payment. We're going to have 2 points due at the time of closing. It's a 30-year fixed rate mortgage at 8.5%. So to find the required down payment, multiply the down payment by the price of the home. So here's our price of our home, $120,000. We're going to multiply that by our down payment, which is 10%. Change that to a decimal, which is 0.10, and then multiply that out. So when we take 120,000 and multiply that times 0.10, so take your calc, take 120,000, we're going to times that by 0.10, we'll get our down payment of $12,000. So we've got to go ahead and make that down payment of $12,000. So when we take 120,000 and we're going to go ahead and subtract the 10,000 or the 12,000, you're going to notice that that is actually the answer to number 14, because 14 wants to know what is the amount of the mortgage we're going to have to take out. So when I take 120,000 then minus 12,000, that's 108,000. We just answered number 14 because number 14 says find the total amount of the mortgage. So we just found the total amount of the mortgage. So we still have to go back and answer the questions that we had on number 13. Once we found that total amount of the mortgage, then we go ahead and answer this question about how much is due at the time of closing. Well, each point is a percent. So to find the point cost, this is what you have to do. You need to find the total amount of the mortgage, which we just did, which was $108,000. And then we got to go ahead and remember that that is found by subtracting the down payment from the price of the home. So when we took that 120,000, subtracted the 12,000, we got our mortgage rate, or how much we need to take out for our mortgage, which is 108,000. And this is the answer to number 14. Then we just got to go ahead and take the mortgage cost times the number of points. Each point is 1%, so 2 points would be 2%. So you notice our mortgage cost right here, which is 108,000. 2 points would be 0.02, because remember 2 points, each point is a percent, so that's 2%. 2 divided by 100 is going to be 0.02. And so we're just going to take our calculator and we're going to take 108,000. And we're going to times that by 0.02. And that's the amount we're going to owe for the total amount of points. Now that we know that, we just answered number 13. So number 13, the answer was $12,000 for the down payment, and our total point cost was $2,160. So now if you look at number 15, it says find the monthly payment on the mortgage. So we've got to take the information that we just found right here and put it into our formula. So here's the information we have. We're gonna do 108,000. We're gonna have our mortgage for 30 years, and it's gonna be at 8.5%. So remember, P is the amount borrowed. N is always equal to 12 when we're doing a monthly payment on the mortgage, because we're making 12 payments per year. We're gonna leave it for 30 years, and R is your rate as a decimal. So to find the monthly payment on the mortgage, use the formula found on the formula sheet, and they call this amortization. And here's the formula that you'll find on your formula sheet for your amortization. If you go back to your formula sheet, you're going to notice that on your formula
At
sheet,
10:30,
notice right here,
received a text message from me.
right here's your
So if you're like, I
amortization.
never got anything at 10:30, maybe send me an email.
So notice this formula right here is PMT all equals P times R over N divided by, and then you got 1 minus 1 plus R over N to the negative NT. And so basically that is your formula sheet right here. That's the formula we're going to be working with. So as we go back to our problem right here, it says here's our amortization formula. So I wrote it down right here. And we're just going to go ahead and substitute those numbers in, and then we're going to put it into our calculator. So notice the substituting in the numbers. So notice in place of P, that's your amount of your mortgage, 108,000. That's how much we're borrowing. Our R is 8.5%, and when I take 8.5 and I divide by 100, I get 0.085. N is always going to be equal to 12 because we're making 12 payments per year. And then our formula still has the 1 minus, and then we just fill this in. So here's our rate again, 0.085, divide by 12. And then this is negative NT, so this is going to be negative 12 payments per year times total of 30 years. So we just take our calculator, and we're going to type that in exactly as we see it. So the very first thing you're going to notice is this problem overall is just one big fraction. So we're going to hit alpha, F1, and we're going to hit enter and start our fraction. In the numerator of a fraction, we type in 108,000. And then we're going to put parentheses there. And then we got another fraction created inside that. So we'll hit alpha F1 again, hit enter. I'm going to type in 0.085 into the numerator. And then into the denominator, we've got a total of 12. Arrow off to the side and put an end parenthesis there. And then we're going to arrow down to our denominator. We've got a parenthesis, and then we've got 1 minus, and then we've got another parenthesis. And we're going to type in 1 plus, and now we've got a fraction inside of this. We're going to hit alpha, F1, hit fraction. And we're going to type in 0.085, and then in the denominator we're going to have a 12. And then we're going to arrow off to the side, put in our parenthesis there, hit your power key, type in negative 12 times 30. And then when we're done, go ahead and arrow off to the side and then put in that end parenthesis right there. So when you put in your calculator, it's going to look the exact same as the formula that you wrote down. Then you just hit enter and just round it off to the nearest cent. So we got $830.43 is how much our payment is going to be. So that answers number 15. So the answer to number 15 is $830.43. Now on number 16, it wants to know how much is the interest. Well, to find the interest, you got to find the total cost of interest. You multiply the monthly payment by 360. Because 360, that's how many payments you actually made. Over 30 years, times that by 12 months, you've actually made a total of 360 payments over 30 years. So to find the total amount paid, then subtract the amount of the mortgage. So if I take this, I take $830.43. We're just going to take our calculator right here, and we're going to type in $830.43. We're going to times that by 360. This is how much we've paid over 30 years. So it looks like we've paid a total amount of $298,954.80. That's how much we paid for our mortgage. Now notice the actual amount of the mortgage was $108,000. So I'm going to take this total right here, and I'm going to subtract $108,000 from it. And this is going to be the total amount of interest you've paid over all those years for your house. So it looks like you've paid a total amount of interest of $190,954.80. And so that answers the question on number 16.